now it's time for Osiris. There are so many of those Egyptians, so we will never come to any other pantheon, I guess. Anyways, so he's god of the underworld. Well, also, I really think this is so good for my discipline to have to kind of, or I decided myself, but focus in on certain days anyways, and then drift a little bit more on others, because I always want to ramble so much here, and to keep myself from doing that each time, it's much more difficult than you can ever imagine, I think, some of you at least. Okay, so I will just start out then. And by the way, I will have a picture up here, a little bit of a family picture here, since I've already gotten to some of them, but I will go through them, at least those, probably more than those, but yeah, some others also I need to get to some other. Well, okay, just starting now then. Osiris, yeah. Osiris from Egyptian Coptic, blah blah blah. Some things they say just is about how you say things, and it's just and also when you press it or you hold this. I'm sorry, I get distracted now, because when you hold this on certain of those, you get more information. I never saw that before. I mean, if you hold the whole thing here. Wow, this is interesting. I've never seen this before. I'm so sorry. If you hold the... Anyways, moving on here. I will just skip when it comes to how you pronounce certain things and whatnot. Alright, he is an Egyptian god identified as the god of the afterlife, the underworld, and the dead. He was classically depicted as a green-skinned deity with a pharaoh's beard, partially mummy-wrapped at the legs, wearing a distinctive crown with two large ostrich feathers at either side, and holding a symbolic crook and flail. Also, then you can, like, I don't know why I've never seen this before. Probably you could before. Come up to like a little, information about certain of these things when you hold on to those. Why didn't I see this ever before? Huh, that's interesting though. I will read that then when it comes to, for example, here it says when you hold here I can call it the pointer of this. Anyways, the crook and heka and flail, nekaka, well, however you say, are symbols used in ancient Egyptian society. They were originally the attributes of the deity Osiris that became insignia of pharaohic authority. The shepherd's crook stood for kingship and the flail for the fertility of the land. Okay, moving on. Osiris was at times considered the eldest son of the sun god, though other sources state his father is the sun god Ra. We need to come to Ra, obviously, also, of course. So I've also tattooed some of these images, actually. Anyways, and the sky god Nut, as well as being brother and husband of Isis. Okay. As well as being brother and husband of Isis, with Horus being considered his posthumously begotten son. You may have heard the story about that when he was spread all over the place, and then magically, well, let me say the story here. Okay, he was also associated with the epithet Kenti Amentiu, meaning foremost of the Westerners, a reference to his kingship in the land of the dead. As ruler of the dead, Osiris was also sometimes called King of the Living. Ancient Egyptians considered the blessed dead the living ones. So beautiful, I love that. Though syncretism with Aya, he's also the god of the moon. Here you can like get to all astronomical info about the moon, and I never saw these things. Interesting. This epithet Kenti Amentiu was also used for Anubis. Anyways, well, and syncretism meaning that it's the same deity in a different version or form, or yeah, and with different clothes, you can say. Though through syncretism with Aya, he is also the god of the moon. Maybe we'll read more about Aya, but Aya is a lunar deity in ancient Egyptian religion. His name simply means moon. By the New Kingdom, he was less prominent than other gods with lunar connections. Thought or duty, and Khonshu. Yeah. Oh, we need to get to Thought, of course, or duty also, and Ra, and Anubis also. At least those, and maybe some others. As a result of the functional connection between them, he could be identified with either of those deities. Alright. Osiris was considered the brother of Isis, Set, Nephthys, and Horus the Elder, and father of Horus the Younger. The first evidence of the worship of Osiris was found in the middle of the 5th dynasty of Egypt, although it is likely that he was worshipped much earlier. The Kenti Amentiu epithet dates to at least the 1st dynasty and was also used as a pharaohic title. Most information available on the myths of Osiris is derived from allusions contained in the pyramid texts. At the end of the 5th dynasty, later kingdom source documents such as the Shabaka stone and the contending of Horus and Set, and much later in narrative style from the writings of Greek authors, including Plutarch. I want to go to talk about these also. Plutarch, later named upon becoming a Roman citizen, Lucius Mestrius Plutarchus, was a Greek philosopher and essayist, known primarily for his parallel lives and moralia. He is classified as a middle Platonist. Plutarch's surviving works were written in Greek, blah blah blah. And so, more was said about him. I want to actually go into that too sometime later. And so, wait, where was I? This was in the middle of the sentence here. In narrative style from the writings of Greek and authors including Plutarch and Diodorus Siculus. And let's see, what was I even saying here? Yeah, the information about the myths here. Diodorus Siculus, or Diodorus of Sicily, was a Greek historian. He is known for writing the monumental and universal history Bibliotheca Historica, much of which survives between 60 and 30 BC. It is arranged in 3 parts. The first covers mythic history, blah blah blah. I'm just beginning there. Osiris was the judge of the dead and the underworld, Duat. and that was the realm of the dead in ancient Egyptian mythology. It has been represented in hieroglyphs as a star in circle. The deity Osiris was believed to be the lord of the underworld, since he personified rebirth and life after death, being the first mummy as depicted in the Osiris myth also. Anyways, yeah, I get very distracted by these things, but I love them. Okay. Osiris was the judge of the dead and the underworld, agency that granted all life, including sprouting vegetation and the fertile flooding of the Nile River. Oh, it's so beautiful. Anyways, he was described as the Lord of Love, he who is permanently benign and youthful, and the Lord of Silence. Oh, loving those names. The king of Egypt were associated with Osiris in death. As Osiris rose from the dead, so would they in union with him and inherit eternal life through a process of imitative magic. By the new kingdom, which is a period in ancient Egyptian history between 16th century BC and the 11th century BC, covering the 18th, 19th and 20th dynasties of Egypt. By the new kingdom, all people, not just pharaohs, were believed to be associated with Osiris at death, if they incurred the costs of the assimilation rituals. Through the hope of new life after death, Osiris began to be associated with the cycles observed in nature, in particular vegetation and the annual flooding of the Nile. Through his links with the heliacal rising of Orion, and I will read the sentence before I go back to that. Heliacal rising of Orion and Sirius, do you say that? Sirius in Swedish? Anyways, at the start of the new year. The heliacal rising of a star cluster or galaxy or star rise occurs annually when becoming visible above the eastern horizon for a brief moment before sunrise, after a period of less than a year when it had not been visible. Historically, the most important such rising is that of Sirius. Anyways, yeah. Oh, I want to talk and read about all the stars now, just suddenly. Yeah, wow. Osiris was widely worshipped as Lord of the Dead until the suppression of the Egyptian religion during the rise of Christianity in the Roman Empire. And as you know, but I will also add that then ancient Egyptian religion was a complex system of polytheistic beliefs and rituals which were an integral part of ancient Egyptian society. It centered on the Egyptians' interaction with many deities who were believed to be present in and in control of the forces of nature. And let's continue here. etymology of the name, and here I probably won't be able to pronounce certain things, so I will just read what I can here. And there are great pictures if you want to yourself go and check on Wikipedia, which this is. Osiris is a Latin transliteration of the ancient Greek. I can't pronounce this. Yeah, I can't say them. Or even see what's different letters, you know. Which in turn is the Greek adaptation of the original theonym in the Egyptian language. Yeah, I will just not go too deep into that. In Egyptian hieroglyphs, the name appears as something else I can't pronounce, which or something. Anyways, which some Egyptologists instead choose to transliterate in a different way. God, this makes no sense to read it like this. Okay, I will just I can't read that and skip those words. I'm so sorry. Oh my. Since hieroglyphic writings lack vowels, yes, that's why it's all quite difficult. I'm so sorry. Okay. Egyptologists have vocalized the name in various ways as Asar, Yasar, Asir, Asaru, Awasar, Awisir, Vesir, Usir, Usair, Ausare. So, Osiris, yeah. Several proposals have been made for the etymology and meaning of the original name. As Egyptologist Mark J. Smith notes, none are fully convincing. Most take Vizir, or however you would say, as the accepted transliteration. I don't know. Is that how you then should say? Transliteration would be like... I don't know. Following Adolf Ehrman. John Gwynne Griffiths, 1980, bearing in mind Ehrman's emphasis on the fact that the name must begin with a... really, is this interesting? Will I just skip all this? I can't even read it, you know, so I will just... There are just several people who have... I will just read a little bit silently. Now I need to read it. This was a little bit interesting, though. Proposes a derivation from that was or with an original meaning of the mighty one. Moreover, one of the oldest attestations of the god Osiris appears in the mastaba of the deceased Neter, however, is a powerful god then. Mastaba. A mastaba or Pridget. Very difficult without vocals. Is a type of ancient Egyptian tomb in the form of a flat-roofed rectangular structure with inward sloping sides, constructed out of mud bricks. These edifices mark the burial sites of many eminent Egyptians during Egypt's early dynasty period and the Old Kingdom. Okay, and then Kurt Sithe in 1930, or actually rather before then though, proposes a compound, something else, some other, anyways, however you would say it, meaning seat of the eye in a hypothetical earlier form. This is rejected by Griffiths on phonetic grounds anyway. And then David Lorton, 1985, takes up this same compound but explains this. Anyways, sound as signifying product, something made. Osiris representing the product of the ritual mummification process. And then Wolfhard Westendorf, 1987, proposes an etymology from that she who bears the eye. Mark J. Smith, 2017, makes no definite proposal but asserts that the second element must be a form of jirri, meaning to do, make, rather than jirt, meaning I then. However, recently alternative transliterations have been proposed. Yushi Muchiki, 1990, re-examines Ehrman's evidence that the throne hieroglyph in the word is to be read. However, and finds it unconvincing, suggesting instead that names should be read in a different way. I won't say them. On the basis of Aramaic, Phoenician, and Old South Arabian transcriptions. Readings of the throne sign, in other words, a comparison with Isis then. Okay. And James P. Allen, year 2000, 1990 was this Yoshi Moshiki, if I didn't say that. 2000 reads the world, James P. Allen, 2000, reads the word as, and also I won't continue saying those things, but revises the reading to 2013 to an. Okay, I will try. No, I won't try even. I will just skip that. And derives from blah blah blah. But anyways, meaning derives it from something meaning engendering male principle. Okay. Oh, done with that. Now moving on. Appearance. Osiris is now represented in his most developed form of iconography, wearing the Atef crown, and Atef then is the specific feathered white crown of the Egyptian deity Osiris. It combines the Hedjet, the crown of the Upper Egypt, with curly red ostrich feathers on each side, and the crown for the Osiris cult. The feathers are identified as ostrich from the curl or curve at the upper ends. Which is similar to the white crown of Upper Egypt. But with the addition of two curling ostrich feathers, as I said now, at each side. He also carries the crook and flail, as said before. The crook is thought to represent Osiris as a shepherd god. The symbolism of the flail is more uncertain, with shepherd's whip, fly, whisk, or association with the god Adjeti of the 9th nome of Lower Egypt proposed. Adjeti is a local ancient Egyptian deity of the 9th nome, centered at Anjet, which was known as Osiris to the Greeks. This deity is also known by the alternative names Anesti or Anejdi. Adjeti is considered one of the earliest Egyptian gods, possibly with roots in pre-dynastic Egypt. He was commonly depicted as a pharaoh with, that is Osiris then again, with a complexion of either green, the color of rebirth, or black, alluding the fertility of the Nile floodplain, in mummy form, wearing the trappings of mummification from chest downward. Early mythology. The pyramid texts describe early conceptions of an afterlife in terms of eternal traveling with the sun god amongst the stars. Amongst these mortuary texts, at the beginning of the 4th dynasty is found an offering the king gives and Anubis. By the end of the 5th dynasty, the formula in all tombs becomes an offering the king gives and Osiris. These modern So it's the same, but it changed from one dynasty to the next. And father of Horus. Osiris is the mythological father of the god Horus, whose conception is described in the Osiris myth, a central myth in ancient Egyptian belief. The myth describes Osiris as having been killed by his brother Set, who wanted Osiris's throne. Isis finds the body of Osiris and hides it in the reeds, where it is found and dismembered by Set. Yeah, this is a story many have heard, and I think Isis retrieves and joins the fragmented pieces of Osiris, but cannot retrieve the phallus, which was swallowed by a fish. Isis fashions a golden phallus and briefly brings Osiris back to life by use of a spell that she learned from her father. This spell gave her time to become pregnant by Osiris before he again dies. Isis later gave birth to Horus. As such, since Horus was born after Osiris's resurrection, Horus became thought of as a representation of new beginnings and the vanquisher of the usurper Set. Ptah Seker, who resulted from the identification of creator god Ptah with Seker. I need to talk about Ptah also. In Egyptian mythology, Ptah is the demiurge of Memphis, god of craftsmen and architects. In the tribe of Memphis, he is the spouse of Sekhmet and the father of Nefertum, who is also regarded as the father of the sage Imhotep. Oh, we need to read about many of this. Seker is a falcon god of the Memphite necropolis. Okay, Ptah Seker thus gradually became identified with Osiris, the two becoming Ptah Seker Osiris, as the son was thought to spend the night in the underworld and was subsequently reborn every morning. Ptah Seker Osiris was identified as both creator god, king of the underworld, god of the afterlife, life, death, and regeneration, as one. Okay, yeah. I just think about the Egyptian, now the Indian, now those. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Anyways, Ram god, Osiris's soul, or rather his Ba, was occasionally worshipped in its own right, almost as if it were a distinct god, especially in the delta city of Mendes. This aspect of Osiris was referred to as Banebjedet, which is grammatically feminine. Oh, I won't continue to try to say different names, it's different spellings. Literally, the Ba of the Lord of the Jed, which roughly means the soul of the Lord of a pillar of continuity. The Jed, a type of pillar, was occasionally understood as the backbone of Osiris, and at the same time as the Nile, the backbone of Egypt. The Nile supplying water, and Osiris strongly connected to the vegetable regeneration, who died only to be resurrected, represented continuity and stability. As Banebjed, Osiris was given epithets such as Lord of the Sky and Life of the Sun, life of the sun god Ra. Since Ra, when he had become identified with Atum, was considered Osiris's ancestor, from whom his regal authority is inherited. Ba does not mean soul in the Western sense, and has to do with power, reputation, force of character, especially in the case of a god. Since Ba was associated with power and also happened to be a word for ram in Egyptian, Banebjet was depicted as a ram or as ram-headed. A living sacred ram was kept at Mendes and worshipped in the incarnation of the god, and upon death the rams were mummified and buried in a ram-specific necropolis. Banebjet was consequently said to be Horus's father, and as Banebjet was an aspect of Osiris. Regarding the association of Osiris with the ram, the god's traditional crook and flail are the instruments of the shepherd, which has suggested to some scholars also an origin for Osiris in herding tribes of the Upper Nile. The crook and flail were originally symbols of the minor agricultural deity Anjeti. And passed to Osiris later. From Osiris they eventually passed to Egyptian kings in general as symbols of divine authority. The cult of Osiris, who was a god chiefly of regeneration and rebirth, had a particular strong interest in the concept of immortality. Plutarch recounts one version of the myth in which Set, Osiris's brother, along with the queen of Ethiopia, conspired with 72 accomplices to plot the assassination of Osiris. Set fooled Osiris into getting into a box, which Set then shut, sealed with lead, and threw into the Nile. Osiris's wife Isis searched for his remains until she finally found him embedded in a tamarisk tree trunk. Oh, I love tamarisk. By the way, those little fruity, very healthy, I think, for me anyway. Which was hauled up the roof of a palace in Byblos. On the Phoenician coast. She managed to remove the coffin and open it, but Osiris was already dead. Byblos in Arabic, Baal, is a Middle Eastern city on Levant coast in the Mount Lebanon, Gourmet, in Lebanon. I never knew that, actually. I mean, that was where he supposedly would have been. It is believed to have been. Anyways, is that really the same place? In one version of the myth, she used a spell learned from her father and brought him back to life so he could impregnate her. Afterwards, he died again, and she hid his body in the desert. Months later, she gave birth to Horus. While she raised Horus, Set was hunting one night and came across the body of Osiris. Enraged, he tore the body into 14 pieces and scattered them throughout the land. Isis gathered up all the parts of the body except the penis, which had been eaten by a fish, the medjet, and bandaged them together for a proper burial. A medjet was a species of elephant fish worshipped in blah blah blah. The gods were impressed by the devotion of Isis and resurrected Osiris as the god of the underworld. Because of his death and resurrection, Osiris was associated with the flooding and retreating of the Nile, and thus with the crops along the Nile Valley. Theodorus Siculus gives another version of the myth in which Osiris was described as an ancient king who taught the Egyptians the arts of civilization, including agriculture, then traveled the world with his sister Isis, the satyrs, and the 9 muses. Well, we will get to them some other time, in Greek mythology. Before finally returning to Egypt, Osiris then was murdered by his evil brother Typhon, who was identified with Seth. Okay, I will say a little bit about that though. The 9 muses are the inspirational goddesses of literature, science, and the arts in Greek mythology. And they were considered the source of knowledge embodied in the poetry, lyric songs, and myths that were related orally for centuries in these ancient cultures. And Typhon, was a monstrous serpent and giant, and the most deadly creature in Greek mythology. According to Hesiod, Typhon was the son of Gaia and Tartarus. However, one source has Typhon as the son of Hera alone. Yeah, there are other ideas about that anyway. Typhon divided the body into 26 pieces, which he distributed amongst his fellow conspirators in order to implicate them in the murder. Isis and Horus avenged the death of Osiris and slew Typhon. Isis recovered all the parts of Osiris's body except the phallus and secretly buried them. She made replicas of them and distributed them to several locations, which then became centers of Osiris worship, yeah. Let's see how long this is. Oh, it was not so much more. Okay, let's see. Osirism, never heard that word. Also known as the Mysteries of Osiris or Osirian Mysteries, was a mystery religion which practiced annual initiation rituals for the cult of Osiris. These ceremonies were fertility rites which symbolized the resurrection of Osiris. E.A. Wallis Budge stated Osiris is closely connected with the germination of wheat. The grain which is put into the ground is the dead Osiris, and the grain which has germinated is the Osiris who has once again renewed his life. And this E.A. Wallis Budge is or Sir Ernest Alfred Thomson Wallis Budge was an English Egyptologist, Orientalist, and philologist who worked for the British Museum and published numerous works on the ancient Near East. He made numerous trips to Egypt and Sudan and so on on behalf of the British Museum to buy antiquities and so on. Right. Death and transition and institution as god of the afterlife. Plutarch and others have noted that the sacrifices of Osiris were gloomy, solemn, and mournful, and that the great mystery festival celebrated in 2 phases began at Abydos, commemorating the death of the god on the same day that grain was planted in the ground, and Abydos is one of the oldest cities of ancient Egypt. The annual festival involved the construction of Osiris's beds, formed in shape of Osiris, filled with soil and sown with seed. Sprouting then there was like the resurrection of the dead in the underworld. So beautiful. The germinating seed symbolized Osiris rising from the dead, and amongst pristine examples was found in the tomb of Tutankhamun by Howard Carter. And Tutankhamun was an Egyptian pharaoh in the 18th dynasty during the period of Egyptian history known as the New Kingdom, or sometimes the New Empire period. He has, since the discovery of his intact tomb, been referred to colloquially as King Tut, his original name. Anyway. Howard Carter also was a British archaeologist and Egyptologist, how difficult that can be to say, who became world famous after discovering the intact tomb of the 18th dynasty pharaoh Tutankhamun, or Tut, in November 1922. King Tut. The first phase of the festival was a public drama depicting the murder and dismemberment of Osiris, the search of his body by Isis, his triumphal return as the resurrected god, and the battle in which Horus defeated Set. This was all presented by skilled actors as a literary history and was the main method of recruiting cult membership. According to Julius Firmicus Maternus, just funny names, of the 4th century, this was reenacted each year by worshippers who beat their breasts and gashed their shoulders when they pretend that the mutilated remains of the god have been found and rejoined. They turn from mourning to rejoicing. And Julius Firmicus Maternus, if I had a son, I would want to give him that name or something. That was like fun. Anyway, I think so. Was a Latin writer anyways, and a notable astrologer who received a pagan classical education that made him conversant with Greek. He lived in the reign of Constantine and his successors. His triple career made him a public advocate, an astrologer, and finally a Christian. Apollo. Never mind that. I can't say anything more when I just told like this, but alright. The passion of Osiris was reflected in his name, Whenever, the one who continues to be perfect, which also alludes to his post-mortem power. Icarnofret Stela. Much of the exact information about the passion of Osiris can be found on the Icarnofret Stela at Abydos. There is an important ancient Egyptian stela dated to the Middle Kingdom and is notable for its veiled description of how the mysteries of the deity Osiris was carried out in Abydos. The stela is 100 centimeters high and made of limestone. Osiris is depicted there standing under. Well, let's see what more it says here. It's erected in the 12th dynasty by Icarnofret, also Icarnefert, possibly a priest of Osiris or other official. The titles of Ikernofret are described in his stela from Abydos during the reign of Senwosret III. Senwosret III was pharaoh of Egypt. He ruled from 1878 BC to 1839 BC. During a time of great power and prosperity, was the 5th king of the 12th dynasty of the Middle Kingdom. Anyways, about 1875 BC, yeah. The Passion Plays were held in the last month of the inundation, the annual Nile flood, coinciding with spring, and held at Abydos, which was the traditional place where the body of Osiris was drifted ashore after having been drowned in the Nile. The part of the myth recounting the chopping up of the body into 14 pieces by Set is not recounted in this particular stela. Stela, maybe, I don't know how you pronounce it. Although it is attested to be a part of the rituals by a version of the Papyrus Jumilak, in which it took 12 days to reassemble the pieces, coinciding with the festival of plowing. Some elements of the ceremony were held in the temple of Wait, do I even read? No. In the temple, while others involved public participation in a form of theater. Temples were. It's interesting that temples were seen as houses for gods and kings, to whom they were dedicated. Yeah, also for the gods. Anyways, the stela of Ikernofret recounts a program of events of the public elements over the 5 days of the festival. The first day, the procession of Wepwawet, a mock battle was enacted during which the enemies of Osiris are defeated. The procession was led by the god Wepwawet, opener of the way, meaning that name. The second day, the great procession of Osiris. The body of Osiris was taken from his temple to his tomb. The boat he was transported in, the Neshmet bark, had to be defended against his enemies. The third day, Osiris is mourned and the enemies of the land are destroyed. The fourth day, night vigil, prayers and recitations are made and funeral rites performed. The fifth day, Osiris is reborn. Osiris is reborn at dawn and crowned with the crown of Ma'at. Oh, we need to talk about Ma'at, of course. We can't miss out on her. So we have a lot of those still left to get to. A statue of Osiris is brought to the temple. Yeah. Ma'at refers to ancient Egyptian concepts of truth, balance, order, harmony, law, morality, and justice. Ma'at was also the goddess who personified these concepts and regulated the stars, seasons, and actions of mortals and the deities who had brought order from chaos. And as I have done several times before, but I want to do it again, Makeda Wisdom, her channel, also she have this wonderful oracle deck, Wisdom of Natural Hair, I think it's called. But I love most of her videos, I think maybe all of them. And the deck is awesome, and I don't have it though, but it's awesome. And I wish I did. But then she also made several videos on the loss of Ma'at. For each one she made one video, so they are awesome. So check them out if you like. I will put a link in the description box to her channel. Wheat and clay rituals, contrasting with the public theatrical ceremonies sourced from the Ikernofret still, from the Middle Kingdom. More esoteric ceremonies were performed inside the temples by priests witnessed only by chosen initiates. Plutarch mentions that for much later period, 2 days after the beginning of the festival, the priests bring forth a sacred chest containing a small golden coffer, in which they poured some potable water, and a great shout arises from the company for joy that Osiris is found or resurrected. Then they knead some fertile soil with the water and fashion therefrom a crescent-shaped figure, which they clothe and adorn, this indicating that they regard these gods as the substance of earth and water. Yet his accounts were still obscure, for he also wrote, I pass over the cutting of the wood, opting not to describe it, since he considered it a most sacred ritual. Okay. In the Osiris temple of Dendera, an inscription translated by Budge, chapter Osiris. No, never mind. Anyways, an inscription describes in detail the making of wheat paste models of each dismembered piece of Osiris to be sent out to the town where each piece is discovered by Isis. At the temple of Mendes, figures of Osiris were made from wheat and paste, placed in a trog, on the day of the murder. Then water was added for several days until finally the mixture was kneaded into a mold of Osiris and taken to the temple to be buried. The sacred grain for these cakes were grown only in the temple fields. Molds were made from the wood of a red tree in the forms of the 16 dismembered parts of Osiris. The cakes of divine bread were made from each mold placed in silver chests. In a silver chest and then set near the head of the god with the inward parts of Osiris as described in the Book of the Dead. Okay, chapter 17, I think that means also beside there. Anyway, and then the judgment. The idea of divine justice being exercised after death for wrongdoing during the life is first encountered during the Old Kingdom in a 6th dynasty tomb containing fragments of what will be described later as the negative confessions performed in front of the 42 assessors of Ma'at. The Old Kingdom is the period in the 3rd millennium, also known as the Age of the Pyramids or Age of the Pyramid Builders, as it includes the great 4th dynasty when King Sneferu perfected the art of pyramid building, and the pyramids of Giza were constructed under the kings and so. The 42 assessors of Ma'at. The assessors of Ma'at were 42 ancient Egyptian minor deities of the justice Ma'at, charged with judging the souls of the dead in the afterlife by joining the judgment of Osiris. And maybe those are the 42. Maybe she even will make videos for each of those. I don't know for sure. The law of Ma'at, how many they are, but I think there are quite many. Maybe that. Okay. With the rise of the cult of Osiris during the Middle Kingdom, the democratization of religion offered to even his humblest followers the prospect of eternal life, with moral fitness in becoming the dominant factor in determining a person's suitability. At death, a person faced judgment by a tribunal of 42 divine judges. If they led a life in conformance with the precepts of the goddess Ma'at, who represent truth and right living, the person was welcomed into the kingdom of Osiris. If found guilty, the person was thrown to a devourer, such as the soul-eating demon Amit, and did not share in eternal life. Amit was a demoness and goddess in ancient Egyptian religion. We need to read about her. I've never heard about that before. Or maybe just briefly then. Was a demoness and goddess in ancient Egyptian religion with a body that was part lion, hippopotamus. You know what I mean then, right? Or what a word. And crocodile, anyways. The three largest man-eating animals known to ancient Egyptians. Hippopotamus. Oh, what a word. Anyways. And they are quite dangerous, though. They look like cute. Alright, if it's what I think. Yeah, I think it is. A funerary deity. Her titles include Devourer of Dead, Eater of Hearts, and so on. Oh, wow. Yeah. A person who is taken by the devourer is subject first to terrifying punishment and then annihilated. These depictions of punishment may have influenced medieval perceptions of the inferno in hell via early Christian and Coptic texts. Purification for those who are considered justified. Maybe you don't know what Coptic, it says also about them that. Anyways, I will just mention that. The Copts are an ethno-religious group indigenous to North Africa who primarily inhabit the area of modern Egypt, where they are the largest Christian denomination in the country. Copts are also the largest Christian adherent group in Sudan and Libya, and so on. Anyway, and so there are in those texts also about those, similarly, hellish. Oh, the Book of the Dead, I get really interested in that also. Anyways, purification for those who are considered justified may be found in the descriptions of Flame Islands, where they experience the triumph over evil and rebirth. For the damned, complete destruction into a state of non-being awaits, but there is no suggestion of eternal torture. Divine pardon at judgment was always a central concern for the ancient Egyptians. During the reign of Seti I, Osiris was also invoked in royal decrees to pursue the living when wrongdoing was observed, but kept secret and not reported. Menmatre Seti I was a pharaoh of the New Kingdom 19th dynasty of Egypt, the son of Ramesses I and Sitra, and the father of Ramesses II. As with all dates in ancient Egypt, the actual dates of his reign are unclear, and various historians claim different dates. With 1294 BC to 1279 BC. Just about the Book of the Dead. That is an ancient Egyptian funerary text used from the beginning of the New Kingdom from around 50 BCE. The original Egyptian name for the text transliterated. Oh no, I won't say that. Anyway, the Book of Coming Forth by Day. It would be then, or Book of Emerging Forth. No, emerging, I mean, not emerging. Okay, I can't like jump here and there all the time. Yeah. Oh, I look forward to read about Tooth. Oh, there are many others. Okay, the last bit here now about that. Greco-Roman era. I will just leave it then. The early Ptolemaic kings promoted a new god, Serapis, which is then a Greco-Egyptian god. The cult of Serapis was introduced during the 3rd century BC on the orders of Ptolemy I of Egypt as a means to unify the Greeks and Egyptians in his realm. The god was depicted as Greek in appearance but with Egyptian trappings. Anyways, combined the traits of Osiris with those of various Greek gods and was portrayed in a Hellenistic form. Serapis was often treated as the consort of Isis and became the patron deity of the Ptolemaic capital Alexandria. Serapis's origins are not known. Some ancient authors claim that cult of Serapis was established at Alexandria by Alexander the Great. But most who discuss the subject of Serapis' origin give a story similar to that by Plutarch. Writing about 400 years after the fact, Plutarch claimed that Ptolemy I established the cult after dreaming of a colossal statue at Sinope in Anatolia. His counselors identified as the statue of the Greek god Pluto and said that the Egyptian name for Pluto was Serapis. The name may have been a Hellenization of Osiris Apis. Osiris Apis was a patron deity of the Memphite necropolis, and that's an ancient Egyptian necropolis located in the city of Memphis, Lower Egypt, and includes the sites of Giza, Saqqara, and Dashur. Most of the pyramids of the Old Kingdom were built here, and so on. Anyways, and the father of the Apis bull who was worshipped there, and text from Ptolemaic times treat Serapis as the Greek translation of Osiris Apis. But little of the early evidence for Serapis' cult come from Memphis, and much of it comes from the Mediterranean world, with no reference to an Egyptian origin for Serapis. So Mark Smith expresses doubt that Serapis originated as a Greek form of Osiris Apis' name, and leaves open the possibility that Serapis originated outside Egypt. Well, who knows? Okay. Destruction of cult. The cult of Isis and Osiris continued at Philae until and Philae is currently an island in the reservoir of Aswan, low downstream the Aswan Dam and Lake Nasser, Egypt. Anyways, until at least 450 CE, long after imperial decrees of the late 4th century that ordered the closing of temples to pagan gods. Philae was the last major ancient Egyptian temple to be closed. And also maybe I should say a few words here about Alexander III of Macedon, commonly known as Alexander the Great, was a king, Basileus, of the ancient Greek kingdom of Macedon and a member of the Argead dynasty. He was born in Pella in 356 BC and succeeded his father Philip II to the throne at the age of 20. So this cult of Serapis was established by him there. Yeah. Okay, I will just end now. This was a lot long, but I hope it gave you something, and although I read strangely. And yeah, talk soon. Much love.